Good evening, everyone. I'm Sharon Secor. I'm the Chair of Art in Bloom for 2025. Thank you, all of you, for being here. We appreciate you coming out to help support the Friends and Mia. Speaking on behalf of all the Friends of the Institute, I'm happy to welcome you here tonight. This weekend is the 41st anniversary of Art in Bloom, a long-standing and beloved tradition at Mia. Art in Bloom brings together the museum's amazing collections with incredible floral interpretations and tens of thousands of visitors from our community, as well as workshops and lectures like this one. The special 4-day event hosted by the Friends of the Institute is the unofficial Welcome to Spring in Minnesota and the largest fundraiser for the Friends. This evening's talk is presented by Art in Bloom sponsor Artful Living. And shout out to anybody who's here from Artful Living. Thank you so much. It is now my pleasure to introduce Ashley Fox. We are proud to welcome Ashley Fox to Art in Bloom as a keynote speaker, an expert in floral design and an entrepreneur who has built her floral business into a thriving brand. Ashley, a Minnesota native, is the owner of Ashley Fox Designs. She's inspired by sophisticated garden aesthetic and the natural world around her. She's a preeminent floral designer who travels the world and our state for her creative work. Ashley's work has been seen in Vogue.com, Martha Stewart Weddings, Brides, People Magazine, Minnesota Bride Magazine, Minneapolis St. Paul Weddings, Nebraska Wedding Day, Flower Magazine, Once Wed, Style Me Pretty, and many others, including Minneapolis's Artful Living magazine. We are delighted to welcome Ashley to Mia tonight as she guides us through the creative process that has kept her at the forefront of the wedding floral and editorial styling business for 17 years. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Mia, for having me, and thank you all for coming. I see some familiar faces out there and some new faces as well. Tonight I was asked to be here by the Friends, and when they first asked me, I said, "What would you like me to talk about?" And they said, "Well, we want you to talk about your process." And I felt really excited, of course, one, that they asked me to, and anytime you ask an artist to talk about their process, they think from the beginnings, where did it all start? So I guess where it started in a Minnesota native, the gateway flower is the lilac, yes? So I very clearly remember this photograph being taken. It was by my aunt, and she said, "Turn around," and she had a little Polaroid camera, and click, there it went. And I quickly went and put those in a vase, and that was the start. So now I live in Woodbury, and I still play with flowers. I'm lucky enough to be able to do it for a living. It's a really, really special thing to take something that you've always been quite interested in and turn it into a career. And when I was little, I explored things that were small. In fact, my parents would find tiny things collected in my pants in the laundry all the time. I would put small stones, small flowers, everything. So I always had to remember to turn out the pockets before. So it just so happened that exploration of things that were small kind of was the thing that built my whole career on, because that looking and exploration and that very, very keen interest in those things has developed what I now call the brand identity. The timeline is I worked at a place called Chaska Farm and Garden, which was in Chaska, owned by a very kind, amazing person, Tom Hayden, and I worked there for about 5 years. I graduated UW River Falls with a earth and plant science degree, worked at a flower shop for 1 year where I learned a technical skill of floral design. I wouldn't say that the retail floral was everything that I had hoped that it would be with floral design. Having been raised in the garden, I really loved the movement and the style and the shapes of those flowers. And the flowers that we see in the flower shops, at least back in that particular time, 25 years ago, a lot of hothouse flowers, things that we love, but didn't have quite the shape that I was hoping for. After the flower shop, I taught at the Arboretum in their family and school education department, and that was an amazing time. I became a mom, and then I became a business owner. So how does a creative maintain an artistic sense of self while designing for someone else? Again, when Mia asked me to be here and speak tonight about the process, I really was thinking, how do I articulate what it's really like when I'm thinking about, when I'm creating something for a client? And what really started to pop out were these 5 things that happened to me over the course of the past 17 years that have allowed me to stand really straight and tall in my business and understand what I was really hoping for and looking for with my artistic sense of self, as we call it. So where did it all begin? I jumped into my garage and made a makeshift studio space in 2008. And it is from that space where I started to take things from my garden and mix it from things from the wholesaler. So here we have a little jasmine, we have some roses, and I didn't really know what I was doing exactly. I had a friend ask me to do their wedding, and I said, sure, I suppose. And we didn't hate each other after, so I figured I was doing something right. And I thought maybe I could do this again. And I did it for the gal who did my hair. She goes, I want you to do my wedding flowers. And we still maintain friendship to this day. So it's, again, something's right. What I also discovered was that starting a business and not having a business degree was something that is very challenging. But what I did discover, and something that was really kept propelling me forward in this business that can really be tricky to maintain when you don't have that business background, was that the things that I noticed when I was at Chaska Farm and Garden and the things that I noticed when I was at the Arboretum was that every time I interacted with a customer, I would start to talk to them about what they were buying. So for instance, someone would come in and they would say, do you have any lily of the valley? I said, sure, come on over, right over here. And I would just naturally start talking to them about what they liked about that particular flower, why they were interested in buying it. And they would start telling me some of these stories. Oh, my grandmother had it, and now I want it. And so after a while, I started to notice that I just liked talking to people about their purchases, and it got me very, very interested in what they were doing with them. And I noticed that people kept coming back again. At the Arboretum, I would talk to people about the same things, and they would come back to me and say, oh, I remember when you showed me this. I remember when we did this. So the experiences were what was bringing people back. It wasn't necessarily a marketing degree, and it wasn't necessarily anything that I had pre-planned. It was just something that was happening naturally. And those experiences, those core memories that they were sharing with me, led them to feel a connection to me in a way that I had not expected. I was hired to sell plants at Farm and Garden, and I was hired to teach about plants, but I never was really hired to give them an experience that would connect them to me. And I thought that was a really, really great moment. And again, that's kind of where the brand identity, little did I know, I didn't really understand brand identity. In fact, I just looked up what brand identity meant like 3 weeks ago for this presentation. And I'm like, oh, that's what it means. Okay, I've been doing that. So I did know something. I do know a little bit about what I've been doing, but it was only through experiences, my own and theirs. So this Chaska Farm and Garden place that I keep mentioning. So it was located right in downtown Chaska. And he would create displays. The owner would create displays that had, maybe there was some dark ligularia right next to some chartreuse tansy. And yep, I have a little pointer up here. So we have some brightly colored petunias up here and some echinacea down here. Now, I didn't really at the time consider what was happening. So all the while that he's creating these displays that I have to water and deadhead and take care of throughout the week and show customers where they are, I was also taking in the shapes, forms, and colors that would eventually crystallize into something that I would create later on. So 24 years in between, I would take echinacea and monarda and dahlia and clematis and shape and form something that really spoke to me. Russian sage. So these beautiful washes of lavender. I also noticed in doing this presentation and putting it together that I like lavender quite a bit. Who knew? So you're going to see a lot of that. Lavender against those beautiful dark pots and the dark shade cloth, and we get washes of color across with that amazing gray poppy and clematis and yarrow and locally grown flowers too, this whole table right here. So where is the inspiration coming from? Where did it all begin? My dad would always say, pay attention to your surroundings when we were walking along the river looking for mushrooms. I'm pretty sure pay attention to your surroundings meant don't fall in the river. It's good advice, right? And that was also leaning towards looking for morel mushrooms, just paying attention to your surroundings and looking at things. He was a big nature lover, a painter. He just really appreciated nature too. And so instilled that in me. And so I instilled it, tried to, in my kids too. So we would go to the Como Conservatory quite a bit and look closely at things. And I try to let them know that, hey, it's nice to slow down. It's nice to look at things. I always am looking down at my feet, sort of trying to get just immersed in the season of a thing. I like to slow down when I'm outside. I don't like to rush. My husband is very used to me being 20 feet behind because I'm just constantly looking down, taking a picture, something like that. So what I would start to notice is that a clean edge against a very textured background was something that always was standing out for me. Light over dark would crystallize into starting to become ideas of things. Nuanced color of an anemone. Now that I started to become a floral designer, I was looking at all of these little nuanced colors, started to become beautiful shapes, and making sure that the flowers are not packed down in, but making sure that they are out and being appreciated. Holding clematis tendrils in June, local product again from a flower farmer, and turns into one of my favorite bridal bouquets that I've ever created. So where do I work? In my 15 by 25 southwest facing studio on our property in Woodbury. In Chaska, it was a north facing. So interestingly enough, as soon as I got to a southwest facing, I was such a sensitive creative that my whole identity was shook up. And I was just not a Dutch master's sort of light anymore, but it was like, here we are. And it was just very, very bright. And it took me about a year and a half to really discover how in the world I was going to photograph in this space. It took some time. I have a long bench in that studio and a 3-door cooler that we operate out of that space. I do weddings, pretty much just weddings, about 15 at most a year. And how do I photograph what I take pictures of? I use a 6-foot folding table, a poly linen from Joanne Fabrics, rest in peace. a 3-foot step ladder from a thrift store, an iPhone 8 Plus, and then I wait for golden hour. And so I figured out a system that worked for me. It was pretty simple. I carve out time in the week, not every week, but times when I'm feeling the most creative or the flowers are speaking to me at the market, and I will grab a bucket just for me and put it together on a table. And this is what spurs the creative process for new clients when they see what I'm doing out there. So it's a really easy load in, load out situation right there. I can do small workshops and create right there at the studio. The neighbors are very curious all the time. They're looking. So the importance of light has become an integral part of my brand identity. It really, the nuanced color of those figs and any sort of flower that comes in contact with that setting sun, it just really, I can't, it's even hard to explain really how much joy it brings me, but that leads me to this creative space for myself, this meditative space that I do every once in a while. It's probably on a Tuesday or a Wednesday evening after a large wedding. I like to do something for myself, sourcing locally grown flowers and creating just for me without any expectations, only intent to discover what works and what doesn't. And through those times where it's only for me, do I find what really resonates with a client or with a prospective client. If I create from the heart, nearly everything works. If from the head, almost nothing. Marc Chagall. Where does inspiration strike? Como. Sometimes Como, it can be Como. It could be a book. It could be a painting at a museum. But I just loved how the dark and the light, that always really grabs me. So these locally grown dahlia mixed with some gladiolas. These gladiolas, I tell you, I don't know how the plant breeders come up with these, but wow. And then the begonia here from a local wholesaler over at Kennecott. But flower farmers in the area, I don't ship in dahlia ever. It's just not worth it. We buy those locally grown. Again, waiting for that light. I'll just stand there sometimes and I just wait for like 10 minutes, just when the light exactly is in the right spot. And it's worth it every single time. Seasonal availability versus locally sourced and flown in product. I typically design May through October because that's when the seasonal product is available. I do ship in floral and use that, but mostly it's things that are grown by local flower farmers. This Blushing Bride phlox, June, July, and August it's a winner. These are almost all locally grown. I think everything in this bouquet is locally grown except, boom, for that hyacinth. That's not around in June. But when a client asks me to do a color palette and then lets me loose, this is what I like to do. I like to go local with it. So seasonality for me is really fun to play with. I don't do it on a regular basis. I don't say, I'm going to make a January table today, or I'm going to make an April table today. It just so happens when the product is speaking to me and I feel inspired to do it. So here's a collection of all the months of the year. And some months have more collections because they either have a more prolific time of year, or I'm just in the studio a lot more during those times of year. So this one, I really liked using umbrella fern that was dried and old and didn't look like much in the studio. And I thought it looked like frost. So I sprayed it white and put it in a tablescape. February, we have acacia, beautiful, mixed with some flown in product, of course, but I love going to the grocery store. That's a big inspiration space for me, is the grocery store. So I like finding things. It can be a turnip that's coming up here, or it can be some citrus. March, the hellebores. I went to a big box hardware store and saw hellebores for sale. I'm not going to name it, but there were hellebores there for a remarkable price, and I bought probably 5 different pots, and then I planted them in my garden when I was done. But these beautiful hellebore is probably one of my favorite flowers. There's the turnip right there. And there's another one right there, I think. Yeah. So very inspired. No, that's not a turnip. That's a hellebore too. So very inspiring, these colors. And again, nobody's telling me to make a mauve table. I just saw the hellebores that day at the store, called up a photographer friend and said, okay, in 3 days you're going to have to come over and get a picture of this. And April, daffodils, hellebore, and we can mix it with some carnations. We're not hating on carnations. We like them. April, beautiful tulips starting to arrive. Forsythia, love that forsythia. And May, wow, May, we all love it. Here it comes. The lilac are coming, these tiny little pansies. Bella poke tulips are brown. Brown flowers are in, if no one has told you. For floral designers and weddings, this is a big thing right now. And then the snowdrops too. So all of these. Another common element in a lot of my designs is I live in Woodbury in a neighborhood that has a lot of evergreen trees. I can only grow things around there that don't mind the acidity. So hellebore are great. Also heuchera are great. So these show up a lot. So keep your eyes open for more heuchera to come here. May, all the I grabbed these blueberries from the store. No, they were not local. But other things coming up. Oh, there's the heuchera again. Anemone, iris, and snowball viburnum. Just beautiful. June. June is peony season. That's all we need to say about that. That's just what it is. This image has sold me about 3 different weddings. Brides coming to me asking, I love this picture. Can you do my whole wedding based on that picture? So I find that those creative meditation times are also an investment into my own business. And it really has become a nice way to explore those different ideas. Really, really fun peony now that pattern is all the rage now. I love these these are tree peony. I don't know their names exactly, but they're such fun. June, again June, clematis. The meadow rue, I love this citrine color. Such a beautiful, refreshing color, and plays well with most other colors too, which is nice. June, midsummer, and here we are with strawberry season, lavender, all the good stuff. Shasta daisies in July, mixed with cherries and a little kiwi in there. And of course, all of our Ami and Queen Anne's lace. These dark ones are fun. I like these. This is called salpiglossus. I don't know if there's a common name for it, but it's a very, very sticky flower. The flower farmers don't like growing it, but it sure is fun to look at. This smoke bush, I just love using that as well. July and August. Interesting fun fact here. So I was basing this whole design off of the leche at the grocery store. Can you guys hear me okay when I turn? Yeah. The leche at the grocery store. So I made all of this, and then a flower farmer came to deliver for a wedding that week. And what did she bring? She brought watermelon and the black cherry tomato. And I said, how in the world did you know that that black cherry tomato is going to be exactly what I needed for that? It was kind of, as a creative, we plan all the time for things, right? We're just, some of us are these A types, or just, we got to have it this way and we have to have it that way. But wow, when you leave yourself open to these happenstance moments, those are the funnest. Those are I think because they are the most rewarding because they are a surprise. And so sometimes we can plan all we want, but wow, it's really fun as a creative that way. August, one of my favorite times for flowers, all of these textures. Xeranthemum, really, really fun, small flower. The zinnia, yeah, Oklahoma ivory zinnia. And fennel, I love designing with fennel. So August, here we go with the dahlia and the gladiolus coming up, jewels of opar. So dahlia to me are a lot like people you went to high school with. I have seen their faces before, but I don't remember their names all the time. And so sometimes we'll have like this cafe au lait dahlia, super, but this might be a Joey Winnie, or it might be a Rock Run Ashley. I'm not really sure. I, of course, would be the Rock Run Ashley. And this is Natalie, I believe. So all of these, when we talk to the flower farmers and they say names back to us and they're starting to say all these names, I'm like, I'm just going to need to see a picture. Thank you so much. August with mums and delphinium, grapes. August, inspired by the farmers market in St. Paul with those beautiful apples. They are the ones that spurred this design. So I went to the farmers market on Sunday, and then I went on Wednesday, picked up all of these from the flower farm, or the local flower market. That's all local that time of year. September, here's our lavender crush. I love the China aster, so beautiful, with the sugar stars phlox, just so inspiring. Again, the monochromatic for me was a fit. Clearly, that's what I lean towards. I love a mixed color palette, but there's something about that meditative space with the monochromatic color that just is really soothing to the mind for me. And September, their names are Platinum Blonde, Dahlia. I do remember her. Yeah. And those lemon yellow sunflowers are really, really super. Probably one of my favorite designs with the fennel again. Just love it. September, more lavender, shocking. And October, these leaves I found when I was returning some glassware. I found them, there was a storm and there was a big branch down in the parking lot of this cottonwood tree. And what did I do? Yeah, I got out of my car and I grabbed the branch and I put it in the car and I brought it home. And I had to make a table with those. I mean, they were just such a delicious, buttery color. So you just never know where the inspiration is going to come from. And a little bit of the same, the miscanthus. And just using that shell, it just felt really, really special to use together because it just reminded me of the ocean, I guess. I don't have any other great explanation other than that. And same players, just different foliage. So we can change that pretty quickly as soon as you change a color of your napkin or your foliage. And these are just Amur maple from my yard. November, this was a drink station that we did for a client, and I was blocking it out in the studio. And the cafe au lait dahlia, stifa grass, and some very old dried clematis pods. So it, for people who don't like to throw anything away, that's very enabling. I'll just leave it there. Here we go with the heuchera again. And the dry things are getting a little bit more dried and you know, that toasty color. I just love that toasty color. Again, toasty with the hops in a wooden bowls. Be careful where you put your candles. December, we have the orchids and the spidery, I know it. It starts with an A. Shout it out if you know it. Amaryllis. Amaryllis, yeah. Okay, so that leads me to all of this creative space, and what does that bring to you? What does that draw towards you? Well, in the very, very beginning stages of my career, it was 2 years in, and someone had offered me a very large check to do an orchid heavy wedding. So I was neither technically ready to do that wedding. You know those big orchid sprays, right, in a ballroom? That's what they wanted me to do. And at that time, a large check was very appealing. But as soon as I took that check from the wedding or from the meeting, I came back home and I just, you know, that sick feeling you get, you're just like, something's wrong, something's not right. And I ended up giving her that check back because I said, you know, as much as I'm really, really grateful that you want me to be your floral designer, what I feel is that this other person could do it so much better. And I didn't want to tell them that it really wasn't a goal of mine to do large sprays of orchids. You don't really ever want to tell clients it's about them. It's more you, it's your choice. Because they like what they like and you like what you like. And so I like to say, this is something that's not towards where I want to go with my business, but I know somebody else that will do that for you. And it was great. But what I, as a people pleaser too, you're just like, well, they're going to be really mad at me. But 3 years later, daughter number 2 got married and I did her wedding because she wanted a garden look. So that really validated my stance on where I stood in my business frame of mind. And I wanted to make sure that ever since that day, I stood by those choices. And I said, if I ever get that pitting feeling in my stomach, I pass immediately. But that doesn't mean I don't like to use orchids, okay? So just because I don't want to use them like that, I'm okay using them like this. So in small amounts, a little bit more natural, a little bit more airy. So I love using orchids. I do like to find kindred spirits with orchids, like this phlox. Other little kindred spirits are things like the middle of these narcissus, daffodil, with the butterfly. Now these are dyed, by the way. So, you know, sometimes your artistic self says, okay, dyed, we can do that. Even though I'm a locally grown kind of flower gal, it's just so enticing that sometimes you just can't say no. Again, here we go with some more orchids. So it's not the orchid, it's the application. And so our lady slipper with acacia. And of course, more monochromatic. A photographer asked me to do more of a Dutch masters piece with her. And so I took some amaranth and hellebore. And what I loved about this piece was that it was just such a breath of fresh air. It was very quiet and it was very low. And I could just really, really see. When I was putting the presentation together, I had thought about some of these beautiful restaurants that I've been at recently where you could see a very beautiful party just kind of gathering with these very low designs near them. I love this little glass with its light shining, just like the corn was. So those little connecting dots, literally here, are things that I look for in wedding design as well, which we'll get to in a minute. So clients that come to me for certain things don't know oftentimes what they're really looking for. I had booked a client for the Weizmann Museum, and she wasn't really sure what sort of style that she wanted. And a couple days after the meeting, I went back into my studio and I started playing, and I made this snail design in about 5 minutes, and I sent it to her. And she said she immediately was like, that's what I want. That's what I want to do. So we created for Megan a whole snailscapes at the Weizmann. It's not fun. They're so much fun to this day. It's she still messages me and says, yeah, they were just the most fun thing. So it doesn't really take the big sprays of anything. Sometimes it just takes a little fun and exploration to figure it out. Which brings me to the third point of visualizing your ideal client. So if you are a business owner, how do you know who your client is if you're not visualizing them? If you're not thinking about what their characteristics are, making a list of the qualities of the people you would most like to work with and what the outcome looks like is essential in making sure that you're getting to where you want to go. So Becca here and Hunter, their families had spaces, or Becca's family had a place up north in northern Minnesota, and they were getting married in early July. This was about 4 years ago, and orange hawkweed and Asiatic dayflower bloomed prolifically, unfortunately, on their property. And what the planner wanted me to do was base the color palette off of this and make it wildflower inspired. This was on my to-do list from probably the very, very beginnings of my career, because I had been walking along the river with my dad all the time, always playing in the meadows. This was an ideal client. And so when it actually happened, I was like, oh, I can actually get clients who don't want roses and don't want these other things that so often happen in weddings. So Becca got her wildflowers, and it was one of the most fulfilling weddings I think I've ever done. Just because it was so true to who they were. It was just such a wonderful experience. We pulled the blues with delphinium and the echinacea, and you can't see it in this picture, but there was also foxglove plants that the father of the bride planted in the garden at the cabin, so that every year it reblooms on their wedding. It's pretty great. All of the containers for that wedding were created by the best man, who is a potter. So on top of that, it's like it just kept getting better. Yeah, and we had a long phone call about the dimensions, the shape of the bowls, everything, and I'm just like, do you mean to tell me I get to tell you everything that I want? And he goes, yeah, just tell me what you'd like. So pretty special day. Again, just that wildflower appeal. And they gave away, they gave away all of these containers to the guests at the end. And the bottom underneath it, of course, had the stamp of the date and the bride and groom on it. Quite nice. And then we tipped a wildflower meadow upside down for them using some dianthus, some mini carnations, and some delphinium. All right, so editing the work is my fourth point, which actually ties into weddings quite a bit. And I'll show you why. Editorial work allowed me to see wedding work differently and hone in on what really mattered for any design to be successful. So when I'm doing these editorials, and I saw a quote recently from Bansky, it says, "The holy grail is to spend less time making the picture than it takes people to look at it." Wouldn't that be nice for floral design? It would be wonderful. And sometimes that does happen. Sometimes you don't spend much time at all. And in fact, sometimes those pieces are the ones people respond to the most. I did a wedding last October where I took a whole bucket of foxglove and I just put it in one container. And that was the piece everybody talked about all weekend. And I'm just like, I did this whole other wedding over here, and so that was that. That just kind of started to show me something. Like, stop thinking about it so hard. This was my first jab at editorial work. It was 1 to 2 years into my career, and they, like Minnetonka Magazine, asked for this bouquet. And I did it exactly how they said. And it took me about 2.5 hours, and it was so painful because I had never done this before for an editorial piece. And of course, it had to be perfect and looks nice. Like I was happy with it. It was photographed in my mom's garage because it was a south facing at the time. So we drove over to her house and they set up the picture. But I didn't love it. Even back then, I was proud of it, but I didn't love it because it just didn't feel like the garden appeal that I was really hoping for. A couple years later, Minnesota Bride magazine emailed and said, "Can you make a compact white and green bouquet?" And immediately I thought to myself, here's my chance. And I said, green and white, sure, I can do green and white for you. But I just sort of left the table, let it lay, that compact word, and I didn't really mention it. And so I said, green and white, fine. I said, how is the shot going to be set up? These are important things to know before you make a piece for an editorial. Because they were going to pick this piece up. They weren't going to have me bring it. So you're under the influence of anybody's hands that want to put it anywhere it wants to go. So I asked the stylist, how are you going to place this? And he said, on a chair or on a wooden box. And so it needed to lay down. So I took the green and white aesthetic and I literally branched it out and I let it sort of spill right off of there, and I took a picture of it and I sent it to him and I said, this is where we're going with this piece. And then I waited. I waited for the feedback because I'm like, okay, either they're going to like it or I'm never going to work with Minnesota Bride again. And this picture was on their header of their Facebook for about 3 or 4 months after that. So I'm like, okay, good, I did something right. Great. But you have to be very careful, yeah, because working with clients, when they want something the way that they want it, you have to read between the lines of what you know to be true as a creative and what they are asking. Minnesota Bride asked for a compact green and white bouquet, and I thought maybe I can push it just a little bit, and it paid off. The next piece was for a photographer who asked me to bring some non-rose items to a shoot to make a flower crown. And I picked out some wax flower and calcinia and brought it to the shoot, and they had a rack of clothes. I didn't know what the clothes looked like. I have no idea. It's happenstance. That's wild. So we were all on the floor about that one for quite some time. and I said, she thought I was like a flower clairvoyant or something. And it just turns out that what that showed me was she gave me some description of what to bring. She didn't really want pastels. She didn't want roses. I'm pretty sure those were the top 2 things. She wanted something textural, and that's what I grabbed. And so if you do something for yourself that you love as a creative, and just watch what happens, and the clients are always overjoyed by that. That's the lesson I learned in editorial work, for sure. The Times soap and lotion company requested some pieces, and so that was really fun to learn how to make sure using your product where it counts and facing the camera. So if you only have a few peony for your bride, like I did a few weeks ago for a client, you need to position those pieces exactly where they're supposed to go in order to capture the feeling of that day. Bless you. You're welcome. I loved the bathtub. again, it taught me exactly where I needed to face things and how very little product you need to actually make something great. This was really only a handful of what looked to be like scraps in a bucket. So editorial work is pretty detailed, and again, that taught me for the wedding work to really, really hone in on what mattered to make a great picture and a great memory for that client. Artful Living has been such fun to work with, and I'm not just saying that because they're a sponsor. I mean, they've just been super and incredible. I have such fun, and I have fun with Minnesota Bride too, but such fun with them. Their creative partners and teams are so wonderful. So we brought in some mums and some grevillea, and the mums and the grevillea. Now, this is for those who know what that guy who creates right on the spot. Sorry, the reference is eluding me at the moment. MacGyver. We have to MacGyver, we have clamps. So instead of having beautiful silk ribbon for our brides, what do we bring to editorial work? We bring bamboo sticks and clamps, and that creates the picture. It's a whole different ball game when creating on an editorial piece because it's about the picture as a whole, this one shot. It's not really about moving through a space like you do at an event. So you can get away with having these clamps and bamboo sticks sticking around. The grevillea, again, was a pull. They asked me to bring a smattering of different items in a bucket, and the grevillea looked just like the earring. The texture was really, really great with it. And that came with a security guard, too, that day, those earrings. So this is what I bring to a shoot, just a couple buckets, and then we just use what we know to feel good on the day. So we had cactus, and the stylist put the jewelry on, and then we just put it right in there. And it's such a great exercise as a creative. The less is more, and we don't need to always pack something full. All you need is just this little element alongside. I use tape inside a terracotta holder of some sort. This is at Shop Mother Earth in Minneapolis, and we created the Birds of Paradise piece from that. A little flower frog to hold up a mum is all we needed on that one, and the rock that held the door open that day. The stylist is holding the piece that this is the final shot right here. And the stylist was the model that day, which was very challenging. I think this weighed about 15 pounds, which was super weird. I mean, it's a great mortar and pestle, but it was unnecessarily heavy, I felt like. And she was shaking back there, like holding this, and then she would look at the shot. Again, another way to explore what exactly do you need in a shot to make it happen. Probably the smallest piece I've ever done for a shoot with the little snowdrops in there. And I love editorials because there's no rules. I put allium in there. Nobody would let me put allium in rosé at a wedding. Allium being in the onion family and all. For Minnesota Bride, I used some Sweet Autumn Clematis. That was my next. So after the green and white, they weren't upset with me, and they asked me back to do some more. And so I went to a nursery and I chopped this off of the plant. This isn't realistic, by the way, for actual wedding application, but they were telling me that the look that day was going to be very rock and roll, and they wanted a juxtaposition from the rock and roll hair and makeup to something extremely soft. So what was the softest thing in September I could think of? Sweet Autumn Clematis. So the next one was, here we go, some orchids, swinging it back to the orchids again. Using that same oak leaf and grass, the tulle is very, very soft and textured, and the orchids are very, very smooth. So they wanted a nice modern piece for that. here with our orchids, and then the final cover shot for that one. Wax flower. Again, smooth dress, textural piece. I use that all the time. It's probably 100% of my philosophy goes to that all the time. Smooth against texture, or textured against smooth. Smooth, a little bit of texture. Smooth, a little bit of amaranth texture. Balance that out. Oh yeah, how'd we get those on there? Gardenia with some glued magnets on there. And amaranth with a little gold cuff, and glued that on there, just like that. Again, I use my iPhone 8 Plus. It's a plus. And they published this shot without knowing that it was an iPhone. They said, "Who's the photographer on that one?" And I said, "Oh, I'm the photographer on that one. I got that with my iPhone." She was a little bit surprised, but you know, nowadays the iPhones are they publish a whole lot from the iPhone. So if you don't have the equipment in your business to make it happen, you can figure it out, even with something very, very just basic as that. My last editorial piece I'll talk about is the big mess we made out at Ashery Lane Farm. And I created a cake meadow, which is a surround on a cake. And I started with some cake plate, or not a cake plate, a salad plate, ceramic, with some wet moss, a little bit of a chicken wire type pillow, some pin frogs, and then the wind came and tipped it all over. And that's okay. It was fine. You know, we're fine. Everything's fine, right? Because that's just, you just have to move forward. So we're drying it out. This is for an editorial shoot. I was only about this far along, and then the wind came. But after a couple hours, we got everything sorted out, and we got that cake meadow put together. Here's our heuchera again, and the grapes. A little bit of heuchera there. I'm always throwing those in. Unofficial mascot, maybe. And then the final, one of the final, actually, that's my iPhone shot. I think that's on portrait mode there. And then the final shot for the magazine. Okay, the fifth point, setting goals. Really, really important in making sure you're getting to where you want to go. Maintaining an active list of creative aspirations and new experiences will assist in decision-making for new projects and jobs. Italy called in 2022 and they said, "Would you like to come over and create?" And I had to think about it long and hard, because even if you have these aspirations to do something, the important thing to know is, can you do it? And it took me 6 weeks of research to understand if I could do that job. And I called places, flower farms, different studios, and this planner here, Federica, she was just a great, great sport. And she goes, "Do you know yet?" And I said, "I'll tell you next week. I'll tell you next week." And she's like, "Why don't you want to know? Why don't you want to come to Italy?" And I said, "I want to come to Italy. I said, I want to be there, but I just want to make sure I don't blow it, you know?" So what ended up happening is on the left here, I found Beatrice. And Beatrice owns a villa, a flower farm, and a studio all on one property. So that was the trifecta there. And then Deb and Camila and Alyssa came with me from the United States here in Minneapolis. Best gig ever, right? We created in the southwest part of Tuscany. We had all of these created by a local potter as well. When we arrived, this is where we worked out of. This space here was the studio. We acclimated pretty quickly. It was all right. Yeah, it was good. The one thing that I really, really noticed over there was that they don't have to ship their flowers in boxes. They ship them because they're coming from Holland, and as long as they're not coming from overseas anywhere, from Japan or New Zealand, everything, all their flowers come in buckets, so you don't have to take them out of boxes. It's so nice. They just unload off the truck right out of the buckets there. And so we would office in this beautiful space. The studio was just beautiful, a little nook, and I call it little because compared to the villa that they owned, it really was just quite a little nook. But it was a great space to work out of. And again, all of these, Beatrice had all of these handmade for her own studio. We had these handmade special for the bride. They were a New York client that had just found me on Instagram. So, yeah. Beatrice again with her flower farm, and of course I go right for the phlox. It's just a given. That's where I'm going after. And then the horses would follow us back all the time whenever we would go. Just add horses and just keep adding more beautiful things. We did a little practice sessions and had a nice double rainbow with our rosé. I mean, it was just, it was pretty great. Yeah, it was great. Our Airbnb was a little farmhouse on an olive farm just down the road. It was a wonderful experience. Early June. So early June was a great time to be there. It wasn't too hot, but it was warm. It was just right. Again, the olive farm looking up. I made sure that I would stop all the time and slow down and deep breathe. I didn't technically sleep with the flowers, but there was some bits of that there. And of course, we indulged for about 3 days. We made sure that we got around to see some of the sites before we really, really had to hunker down and work. So the markets, and you still have to do dishes in Italy, by the way. So, all right. So all of these fresh flowers were delivered by a local flower farmer from up near Milan, which is, actually more northern than that. So he drove about 6 hours to bring us all of these one way, which was really nice. And he doesn't have an Instagram. He doesn't have a website. He only communicated on WhatsApp. And I was assured that this guy was legit, and I only had, and everybody in Italy says everything that's okay all the time. Like, it's okay, it's fine, it'll be great. So I just had to trust that he was going to show up, and he did. But here's all of our flowers and greens arriving from Holland. This was Alberto, and he's the only flower farmer I know that delivers in a button-up shirt. It was pretty nice, pretty posh as far as those things go. Tallest allium I had ever seen in my whole life. It was insane. I didn't purchase it that day. We didn't have any need for allium that tall, but we wanted it, but we didn't purchase it that day. For the welcome dinner, it was a red theme. So the pepperberry and some of the, again, the jewels of Opar, just love that, and the chocolate me. Everywhere on the property at Castello di Vicarello is uphill. Then you go down a hill, and then you have to go up a hill again. So the property for the wedding celebration, the 3-day wedding celebration, was at the peak of this hill. And the reception, ceremony, and rehearsal dinner were down here, and the day before the welcome was on the other side of the hill. So we were so grateful for that golf cart. I can't even tell you, because we would have been walking and walking and walking. So that was pretty nice to have. Just beautiful, beautiful, the welcome dinner this was for. So poolside on one side of the hill. And this is the planner and I trying to figure out which to use. Very detailed planner. I love her, but it was very much like, oh, okay, we're gonna have a conversation about twine. Got it. All right, here we go. Yes, and it was great. It was beautiful. So beautiful. It all worked out just great.
When did you go?
I think this one, the smaller one. Everybody's like, yeah. It's a good choice, good choice. I'll send you the link. Yeah. The welcome dinner was crafted out of the experiences just a few miles away at the sulfur baths. So the palette was taken directly from. It was just extraordinary. I will say that I loved doing the wedding day, but I think the rehearsal flowers were probably my favorite. The bowl of cream peony, muscari, tweedia, Janine spray roses. Some Janines are some of my favorite, and ranunculus. If you want a white spray rose, just go with Janine every time. They're really great. Hot take. And so we, you always quality check on top of a gorgeous marble table, right? That's just what happens in Italy. Yeah. Right before we were to set all the flowers on the table, the rainstorm blew in. And we had to cover all the tables. The flowers weren't on the tables yet, but they did a magnificent job of covering with plastic all the tables. And then 20 minutes later, it was done. It was like this happens all the time. So it was no problem. But all of the flowers, I don't know if you can see it, have these beautiful little dewdrops on them. It's almost like we sprayed them to feel just dewy and fresh and marvelous. They were so happy, and it looked beautiful. And I highly recommend hiring 3 local guys to carry all your stuff for you when you do any event, especially in Italy, especially when you have hills going up and down, up and down. So it was really marvelous. All they did was stand around and wait for me to tell them what to carry. And it was great. It was great. Beatrice, I had to thank her for that. I'm just like, that's genius. Absolute genius. Just a beautiful evening in Tuscany, as you do. The beautiful pastels. The bride wanted pastels for wedding day. So here we've got wedding day cake flowers that we've got. We did sustainable for as much as we could on this one. It was very tricky logistically on this wedding, but the ceremony was all foam free on this point here. So I really tried to tie in the colors and the textures of the spaces that we were in into the ceremony. I didn't want a huge pastel piece in the middle of the Tuscan hills. I wanted something that looked quite effortless and connected to the place. I did meld a little bit of her pastels in here, but again, taking what my client asked for and sort of shaping it, and she loved it. She loved it. And this is the ceremony piece a little more up close. This is a lot of what Alberto brought. I'm afraid to say I can't remember what the name of this is, but we loved them. They were really tall. Just beautiful. So the Celine lanterns, the whole hillside of the villa was covered with Celine lanterns, and so I made sure to do all the bridesmaids' bouquets with a similar aesthetic to that Celine, knowing it was going to be in bloom at that time. And again, you can see the hills. Everywhere is hills. Just a beautiful evening for the ceremony. Flowers and food and drink everywhere. Using the bowl of cream peony, and her favorite was white tulips. Her fiance proposed, I believe, with some white tulips, so we brought those in. Every place setting had them. Can't do it without a great crew. Such a special memory. I highly recommend. How does an artist maintain a creative sense of self when working with clients? Know what you like and learn how to best show it to your clients is ultimately it. Do what you feel is best and learn how to show that to them. Allow your own observations to guide you and beware the noise. About 5 years ago or so, I really tried to put the blinders on as far as things that were getting fed to me on social media, things that I was seeing from flowers and different creatives, And I just decided to really kind of shut all of that out. And it really felt like a breath of fresh air. It felt really good, and it made me more self-aware as to what I wanted to do, not what I was trying to do to keep up at all. Also, listen to your clients. They will bring new ideas to the table. It's very exciting to think of things with them. For instance, one of my clients, they were from Sweden, and the groom was from Sweden. And so I asked, is there a special flower from Sweden? And he knew right away. The campanula was the flower of Sweden. So we used that a whole bunch in their wedding. So just, again, going back to these conversations with clients, going to their core memories, and really getting a sense of who your clients are and what is really going to make them happy on the day. We are doing it to feed ourselves, but we really want to make them happy too. Thank you all so much for coming tonight. Thank you. There's time for a few questions if we're all still awake. Yeah.
Excuse me. Hi, Ashley. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Can you
put a pretty picture up?
Okay. Can you tell us about your local staff and
Yes.
how you select them?
Yes, good question. So there's flower farmers in the area that you can buy direct from if you have a tax ID number, or some of them have open market retail days as well. So I buy a lot from Northerly Flora, is a flower farmer. There's also the Twin Cities Flower Exchange. There's a really great space now also called rooted.com, and rooted.com is a platform where you can buy wholesale local flowers. And that is it doesn't cost anything to be on that webpage, space, whatever, business. And you can buy direct from the flower farmer on Rooted. Even if I go somewhere like San Francisco to a destination wedding, I can go on Rooted, put in the zip code, and it will tell me the flower farmers that I can buy from. It's an exceptional platform. It's really exciting. And, I think it's fine to say, I just talked to her recently, and she said they're expanding into food now, and that's going to be opening up a lot of things for Rooted. So, yeah, great question. ROOTED, rooted.com. Is it Rooted Flower Farmer? Just Google it.
Rooted farmers.
Rooted Farmers. Thank you, Gales. Thank you. I paid them to be here. No, I pay them for weddings, to help me on weddings. Yes. Yes, any other questions? Yeah. My favorite containers. Oh, I love that question. My favorite containers are ones that don't tip over. Truly, a wide base is nice. I like something with a little shape to it, where something can spill. That's quite pretty. So any sort of compote. I have to put my hands in my pocket. You know, when you go to art fairs or even a thrift store and there's just like a one-off compote, I'm like, oh, I can't have another one-off compote, you know. So compotes, I think, are quite good. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Go ahead. Oh.
You have a lot of fruit in your designs. What is your inspiration behind that, and how do your guests respond to it when they're seated at the table with that?
Yeah, we find fruit bitten into quite a bit from weddings. That's true. So I always try to, buy from grocery stores and make sure that it's okay to eat if you put it on a table. Because people will, after a couple, and, just start eating it. I don't know, it just always has felt like what your question again was, why?
Yeah, the inspiration behind it.
Yeah. I think it's just an extension of the texture and shape and color. It's just, even though I like to edit my work, sometimes more is more on some of these tables where you have the flowers, then you have a plate, and what's in between there? And I like to put stuff sometimes in between there. Not everybody loves the fruit on there. I like it though. Yeah. Yes.
Do you have a book, or are you planning to publish a book?
Oh, that's a great question. I've been honored to be in a few books, but I don't have a book myself. Do you know a publisher? We can talk later. We can talk. I don't. I've heard that it's very difficult to write a book, and I'm here for it, but I'm, what should I have a book? What should my book be? What should I have in it? The table photos. Yeah. Yeah, I thought about a coffee table book like that. Okay, thank you. All right. Publishing, writing that down. Publishing. It's good. Yes, right here.
Hi, thank you so much.
Hi.
This is so inspiring.
Oh, thank you for coming.
I was just curious if you could speak a little bit about the process of working on a large project, like some of these weddings, and what it's like to work with a team, how you handle getting something so like fragile as a flower that doesn't live very long, like out into the world for people, how you learned that time management maybe, and the creative process of sort of sharing your vision with others who work with you.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I would say that doing a large project like that, I first went and worked for other large projects. I didn't jump in with both feet and said, let's see what happens. That's not great. So I think that in and of itself is the key piece to learning how to do something bigger than you feel that you're capable of, is to learn from somebody else who's already doing it. So I went and did that, and there were some validating pieces to that. And then there were some things that said, oh, I see what that person is doing, and I don't think I'm going to do it that way. And you formulate your own processes for things. And as far as handling flowers that are so fragile, you just have to touch them as little as possible. It really is true. Some of those wildflower types and things that are very fragile, we work with them as quickly as we possibly can and either put them in the cooler or spray them down, and literally don't touch them, don't move them. It is a babysitting job, and you can sweat a little bit. It's still nerve-wracking. Yeah. And you wonder, why do you do that to yourself? It's a question I ask almost weekly. When I do these weddings, why do I do this to myself? And I think it's because the creative process is just such a wonderful thing to have. It's like you have one child and you're like, oh my gosh, how can I ever go through that again? And then you have another one and you're like, well, something to it, but not exactly the same realm. But even though there's pain, there's still a joy to it. Yeah. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about foam versus foam free? Do you have a preference?
I love using foam free for the fact that the flowers love it better. The foam allows us to work quickly on site. But the foam is not great for the environment at all. So therein lies the problem. So sometimes we have creative meshing with our moral values or our creative values. And so that is tough. And I'm not completely foam free right now, and I wish that I were, but I haven't been able to do that. With some of our logistics, it just hasn't gotten quite there. But I do it as often as possible, just because those delicate flowers that I like to use, they love straight water. So I love using that as well. It's easier to clean up. It's just so much better. So much better. Great question. Hi, Amber.
Hi, Ashley. When you do your tablescapes for yourself, are you renting plates? Are you thrifting plates? Do you have a massive plate inventory?
Yeah, it's great. It's great. There's a little IKEA cabinet in my studio, and I have about 6 or 7 different plate sets. And I rotate those with 6 or 7 different napkin sets and about 3 silverware. And those mix and match is innumerable. You saw similarities between, but they all looked different in some way. So you can mix and match things in that way. I do thrift stores or Crate and Barrel. I've cut myself off now. I don't need any more plates though, because you get a basis of some, right? And then that's all you really need. So you can go to Savers or wherever and just find little things. A lot of my glassware, the special glassware, is thrifted from places like that. Yeah. But I'm done now. Yes.
Do you use wire meshing or tape?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. In the compotes for sure. And chicken wire is used almost on every single wedding that we do. Whether it's a ball of chicken wire in a container with tape for the flowers, or it's a large installation, chicken wire. Yeah. Should buy stock in it. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Absolutely. Can I say a special something real quick? I know there's just some of us smattering of us here, but there's some special people I'd like to thank. One, my family's here. My husband and 2 kids are here. Thank you for coming. Thank you for, all of that. Another special person in my life is the owner of Chaska Farm and Garden, Tom Hayden. He's here. Yes. Very special. Yeah, thank you so much, Mia. Thank you, everybody, for coming. It's been a real honor to be here. Please contact me with any other questions that you might have that you think of on the way home. I'm happy to answer those, or if you want to talk more. Thanks again. Thank you.